For those on the call so far, thanks for joining. We'll start in a few minutes. I just want someone to confirm, if you go to the lower right portion of your screen, the little dot, can someone click that and see if raise hand is an option that pops up?
It shows on, can you hear me?
Yeah.
It shows on my list for participants, raise hand, but not on.
Yep, that's where I'm talking. Yep, so if you click participants, yeah, I just want to make sure that's popping up for people, because that's how tonight you'll be able to get in the queue line to speak.
Okay.
Hey, Tyler, Natraj here. The link that you sent on the email just prior to the meeting did not work. I had to go to Facebook.
Yeah, I just sent another one.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, for any HRC member, it was just the link I sent you. It wasn't the one that I communicated from a broad perspective. I think I accidentally deleted a letter. So I just sent an updated link just to the HRC members, so you have it.
So if you're logged in just by phone, how do you get in the queue to speak?
Once we have people that aren't raised their hand, we'll have a time that asks for people on the phone that if they want to speak, they can. So there'll be a few instances that we'll be able to do that.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
If you're on the phone, there's 3 dots that appear at the bottom right that says more. If you click it, it shows raise hand.
Oh, great.
Where's
Is it, Michelle, is that only on, obviously that would only be on like a smartphone device, correct?
I have a Android.
An Android? Okay.
And I have the Zoom app.
Okay.
So what do you do? Do you have to click join meeting?
You gonna watch the news?
I'm gonna watch the news, yeah.
I'm gonna get an earphone.
That's the real concern that people have. It's the safety issues. And if you look at the paper,
in case for that caller that asked a question, if you can't find it, don't worry. We still will have an opportunity for those that are just calling on a phone that doesn't have that function to still participate. So we'll be going through all those instructions in a few minutes.
Okay.
So, next time, the hours I log
For those that are joining the call, if you could make sure to mute. If not, I might actually mute everyone for those that can't, but if you could take a second to mute, that would be great.
I like the background, Ellie.
Tyler, would you be recording this?
It's
Sorry, I
record-
don't mean
yeah,
to.
it's recording right now.
Okay, I'll turn that off.
Yep. For those that just joined, please mute if you haven't yet. Otherwise, I'll be muting, but I just want to, if you could help me out to do that, that'd be great. Is Representative Bowen on the call?
Tyler, I didn't see that his name was listed on the, I've been checking the list, so I haven't seen it on here.
Yeah, we'll wait till he gets, we'll give him a few more minutes.
Absolutely. And do we know if State Rep, Senator Lena Taylor is on here? I was looking for her as well.
Hey, Tyler,
Yes,
is there a link to this meeting up on the village website?
yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, if people are asking you, there's two ways. We have something under community events in the village calendar on the front page. And then also on that front page, we have news and events. And we communicated through that avenue as well.
Got it. Just wanted to be sure people could get in if they needed to.
Yeah.
That was me. It was little user error. I didn't see it in the agenda section. So, but I didn't look at the front homepage either. So sorry.
That's okay.
It's also on Facebook. There's also a link on the Facebook Shorewood is talking about page.
Yep, it's on the village's Facebook too. So there's a few, so hopefully as we get started here, if people are still looking, they'll find it through some of those avenues. Yeah, so let's see. Sure, Vita, I'm going to give him a quick call, okay? Sure, Vita, why don't we get started? I think he's going to hop on any minute. I did just speak with him, but at least we can do an introduction, and then I can, after you're done with it, I can talk about general rules or procedures of how the forum will be done today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tyler. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending tonight's Shorewood Community Forum. We appreciate your attendance. Hopefully, everyone will feel comfortable in this space, that we will be able to have conversations that sometimes might be uncomfortable, or at least that we need to bring awareness to. Hopefully, this can be a space that we will all be able to at least, respect each other for our differences, and just be able to have a conversation to help us to continue to move forward. So I thank everyone for their attendance. I'm Chair Vita Parker, the Chair of the Human Relations Commission. Tyler, did you want to take over?
Sure, that'd be great. So Representative David Bowen will be joining us momentarily. He is our facilitator for this evening. We have time allocated from 5:30 to 7:30 to be able to have this community forum and really allow community members the ability to share ideas with one another. We have a number of Human Relation Commission members who are in attendance, will be taking notes, and their task is to help prioritize the ideas that are shared. So when they next meet, we'll kind of put together a draft plan that will prioritize the ideas and get start action on those. So this is kind of a brainstorming session amongst community members. If you want to, if there's any stories or things you want to share when we get to an open mic session, you're more than able to. But just know that we're really at this point starting to look for ideas on how we can strive towards racial equity and address some equity, diversity, and inclusion issues that have been seen in the community. Once Representative Bowen gets on the call, he's going to do a brief introduction for himself and just talk about the from his lens of what he's seen in the Milwaukee metropolitan area and just throughout the state. And then he'll be facilitating tonight's conversation. After his introduction of that, we'll have an open mic. In order to get in the queue line for the open mic, if you click participants, you should see on the bottom right hand corner, there's 3 dots that you should be able to click and select raise your hand. I will be able to see that, and I'll go down the list as far as who's raising their hand. We will try to give everyone a chance to speak first. So if you have spoken, you can get in the queue line again, but we would give priority for those that have not spoken yet. For those that are on a phone that doesn't have the capability of raising your hand and getting in the queue, we'll have a few portions during the night that will open it up for you, certainly for you to speak and give you that opportunity. We would respectfully ask people to keep responses limited to roughly 3 minutes. I don't anticipate us cutting off anyone because it is important to hear what you have to say. But there's a lot of people on the call. We already have 65, and I would anticipate that number to grow even more. So we really want to allow as many people to speak as possible. And we're going to, the chat is open. So that is another way that if someone doesn't want to go to the mic and provide feedback on anything that is being said during today's meeting or today's open forum, that you can provide anything in the chat. And then we may try some polls tonight too, depending on how the discussion goes. We have some poll questions lined up. This is the first time we're trying it, so we'll see how that goes. With that being said, Representative Bowen, are you now on the call?
I'm here.
Great. So Representative Bowen, thank you for spending your time with us. If you could just take about 10 minutes just to talk about your experiences thus far, as far as with the Black Lives Matter movement, especially in the Milwaukee metropolitan area. And then there's other things that you're seeing with the state, just to kind of introduce the topic a little bit more before we start the open mic portion.
No worries, no worries. First off, thank you guys so much for having me, members of the HRC and residents of Shorewood, willing to have this conversation. I think it's really important in this era. Folks have been protesting for the last 40, today is day 47. And there's no way that folks can find the time out of their schedule every day to do something for something, to step up to do something for no reason. It means that this era is resembling something that's different. We've been in this space before. Milwaukee has seen unrest and a number of times when we've called for change. But I will tell you by firsthand experience of witnessing so many people out there, it is very clear that there are folks that are from multiple generations, multiple races, multiple sexual orientations that are coming together to say that we can change this in our lifetime, that we can live in a world where Black folks are not killed in police encounters, that we can see racial justice efforts accomplished and realized in relatively short time. We don't have to wait until the next lifetime for our children to be able to take this mantle. Folks are standing up and getting engaged right now. So I'm so proud of the folks that I get a chance to go out with every day that still believe that this call for accountability is not too much to ask for, that police departments can be changed, that they don't have to stick to the status quo. One of the introductions, important parts of the introduction is to realize that police departments were created and designed to provide gold standard service to the white people who call for help from them. And to acknowledge the fact that especially in suburbs, those police districts those police departments were used as a mechanism to keep Black bodies outside of those jurisdictions where folks felt like they did not belong. So it's really important for us to have a proper context that we cannot actualize racial justice, that we cannot actualize racial equity without getting uncomfortable, without acknowledging the fact that you just can't do this in a nice way. As much as we would want maybe the chance to do that, it's going to get uncomfortable. It's going to challenge you, and it's going to challenge all of us in our conversations and being honest and a lot of times just raw on our feelings of how we got here and what it takes to get out. A big portion, a number of the things that stop us from getting there would be white fragility and not acknowledging the systemic oppression from white supremacy. And sometimes when you use those terms, it can make some people want to shy away from the conversation. It can make folks want to believe that those are farce stories and perspectives that get in the way. But essentially, at the end of the day, we know that the system of white supremacy right now that we have, it was designed to be able to thrive in this current environment. So I want to just mention a number of points about where these terms come from. So white fragility is also known as white defensiveness. That term is coined by academic Robin DiAngelo, who herself is white, and refers to defensive responses by white people in response to discussions of systemic structural or societal racism, white supremacy, and white privilege. Oftentimes, these responses can include deflection, argumentation, dismissiveness, becoming silent or shutting down, or simply leaving the uncomfortable conversation altogether. And it can manifest as anger, fear, or guilt. It definitely comes from the uncomfortable conversations that people are not willing to have. And when you have a situation like what happened in June by Stephanie Rampkin, who decided to take her car and block the protest of upwards of 3,000 plus people in Shorewood protesting an amazing march put on by amazing young people. And for her to target one of the young Black leaders of that march and to spit on him. Essentially, she was saying that she was so scared of changing the status quo that it would make her feel like she is losing her safety. She is losing her ability to keep things the same way in Shorewood. And now, there's always this perspective that, just people in Wisconsin are nice, and especially in Shorewood. But that is not always the case. And let's be very honest. Being nice sometimes allows you to put flowers and potpourri and air freshener in a situation where the stink is not being removed. But you're adding more things so you don't notice that odor. So we're going to be very honest in what we can do as a community. Shorewood is not an island. We could change policies in the city of Milwaukee, and we literally still could have Black and brown people travel across a bridge, travel across a boundary, and still lose their lives in police encounters. And it would be ultimately no way to hold an officer or police department accountable because there are no standards that are sanctioned across the board, like some of the bills that we're proposing in Madison right now. So it is really important for us to not get distracted from the feeling that we have to be defensive, or that folks should be allowed to be defensive, especially when you have students that live in Shorewood that are students of color. You have families that live in Shorewood that are families of color. They are coming across systems of education, systems of law enforcement. They're coming across the chance to be able to live with dignity in Shorewood and engaging in the public school system in Shorewood, to roam in Shorewood. But they are left at the mercy of what we are willing to do to completely eradicate racism and anti-Black feelings and sentiments and policies that leave Black people at a disadvantage as well. So I want to highlight that. I have too much to cover in 10 minutes, so I'm going to actually just really just wrap up around white supremacy to really just outline what it is. And then we can get to a place of just hearing what folks are willing to do, what ideas do people have to be able to truly eradicate racism and anti-Black sentiments in Shorewood. So in essence, just to translate, white supremacy holds that whiteness and the norms of white society are neutral and should be the standard. I've always heard comments about neighborhoods in Milwaukee, and that, if you would just change problems that people are causing, that all of a sudden it would just be different. But it's really important to recognize systemic level oppression, especially for folks that are not impacted by it. It's hard for them to see and fathom it. And one of the things that I think is different about this era and witnessing a white officer in a completely different state and city put his knee on the neck of a black man who really reminds us and all of our families. You have that family member that's usually just bigger than normal, right? George Floyd was your big uncle, your big brother, your big cousin, and they were muscular, they were big, and usually at an early age, and they are automatically taken as a threat just based on their size. So it's very clear that this black man is clearly subdued. He's in handcuffs. There's nothing else that he can do, and this officer still felt threatened enough not to remove his knee from his neck for 8 minutes and 47 seconds, which is a long time. Even if you engage in the kneel for 9, it is a very long time, and it gets in the way of us being able to just say that there are just bad apples in our police departments or police personnel that mess it up for the rest. We're now talking about the culture in police departments that allow for an officer to do an action like that and not be held accountable, as if this man's life did not matter. So it's important for us to, as we think about, a suburb of the city of Milwaukee, that clearly all suburbs were created with on purpose to create white spaces, to create white controlled spaces, and they were government created and funded with housing and urban development dollars, with the GI Bill dollars, and creating these new spaces where black bodies weren't supposed to belong. And we need to have a conversation from the context of how do we create a solution to hold people in Shorewood like Stephanie, like anyone else that would have those views and want to exert them in the village of Shorewood without being held accountable, without feeling like they need to change. Ultimately, we must be louder than them. We must be more courageous than them. We must be willing to go harder than them to protect the people in our community and hold them accountable.
So Representative Bowen, so with that being said, I think we'll open the open mic portion. So what I'll do is for those that raise their hand, we already have a line forming. So I'll call on them, and then Representative Bowen, as a facilitator, if you have any follow-up questions or anything you want to build upon, any comments, feel free to do so. But the first person that has raised their hand is Trustee Jessica Carpenter.
Sure. And let me just mention this, Sharpita and members of the HRC, as you guys are taking notes. And if it's something that you want to expound on, just unmute yourself and let's go deeper on certain things. But we'll try to get to as many people as possible. So the first one, go ahead, Tyler.
So Trustee Jessica Carpenter, you're first.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, HRC and David Bowen. I think this is an excellent place for our community to start. The reason that I wanted to speak was really about my own perspective. As a Jewish woman in our community, I have experienced multiple levels of anti-Semitism within the school district, within our community. I know that the HRC was working on a holiday decorations policy, and we did not move forward with that as a board. But I think just like what David Bowen was referencing, we as a community have to be willing to make radical changes. And that includes not holding school board meetings on Yom Kippur, not scheduling standardized tests on Rosh Hashanah. And I realized that this conversation and this dialogue was in relation to Black Lives Matter. But I think that if we're going to talk about how we can be an inclusive community for everyone, that is another part of our lack of inclusivity. And I would like for us to be inclusive for everyone, regardless of your skin tone, of your religious background, because as soon as we discriminate against one group, you know, we are only as good as our weakest link. And that to me is something that I just want to make sure is included in the dialogue as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Can I challenge you to think of some solutions when it comes to, you know, the anti-Black sentiments that, you know, are going to perpetuate themselves as well, and trying to challenge those? Can I challenge you to come up with a solution there?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, I am hopeful as a village board. We are moving forward in some different ways. I'm hopeful that we will continue to make changes within the community. But yes, I mean, I'm open to that as well.
Okay. There's one of the things that we've thought about, you know, when it comes to especially residents dealing with housing issues, or where they immediately live in the village, and having the folks that are engaging in the discriminatory practices and situations, that they actually should be contacted by someone on the board to help counter those things that happen. So in an example, there was a resident that was being discriminated against by her, I believe, neighbor in the same house, and there wasn't any pressure at all put on her neighbor that continued to accuse that resident, because they were Black, of things that they weren't doing, things that they were not guilty of, and it became a very toxic situation, so much so that resident that was African American, that was Black, did not want to live immediately in their own home. They would go to a hotel. They would actually leave their home. So in a situation like that, you actually do need champions in Shorewood, and those on the board that are willing to actually get engaged and get involved. And I would hope, Board Member Carpenter, you'd be open to that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Trustee Warren, as the HRC liaison, and myself, you know, I hope to be a strong ally and be able to support in whatever way possible. I have had residents reach out to me about other situations and that have happened within the community. And, you know, I think even just being able to have the dialogue is a big step forward, because it's not something that was happening in the past.
Sure.
Thank you.
Next is Natraj. Natraj, if you want to unmute yourself and go ahead.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
So, Jessica, Trustee Carpenter, I totally understand and I appreciate the inclusiveness concept that you're talking about, primarily because I'm not white. I am an Indian, and I sort of can straddle the side of the whiteness and the Blackness, because that is something I learned to do in India. The question that I think I have relates to how we, Trustee Carpenter, you hit a nail on the head. We need to be inclusive. So to Representative Bowen, I totally understand change is happening. It is happening at a faster pace than we can even figure it out. It's happening across races and ages and and even generations, if you may. So one of the things that I am looking at is it just a question of black versus non-white? Because I think there is Japanese Americans, Chinese Americans, Arab Americans, Jewish Americans, Indian Americans, who may all have the same experience in some fashion or the other, given the fact and acknowledging the fact that slavery that resulted in discrimination, that resulted in segregation, is a reality. So from that perspective, one of the things that I have done, and I'm actually a Rotarian. I'm a member of, I'm doing a project with the Reentry Council of Milwaukee, which is part of the Milwaukee Justice Council. And we're looking, and the process that I'm mapping out is how do we get people who are incarcerated into productive jobs. Because it is important to keep in mind that African American individuals who are incarcerated and Latino incarcerated people have a very tough time when they come out. The problem with that is that they go back in. My challenge to the board, and I'm also going to be the incoming president for the Shorewood Men's Club. So on that regard, I would like to say, Trustee Warren is a member of the Men's Club. And I think we are maybe the minority, 4 or 5 of us who are not white. So it's an interesting dynamic. I've learned a lot. Representative Bowen, I understand from a Black understanding of how to understand white people, and from a white people to understand what Black people is about, I understand what you're talking about. So my challenge to the board is, can we, in Shorewood, employ a formerly incarcerated individual? Thank you.
And I would, thank you for your comments. I would say one of the things that also gets in the way when there is a chance to focus on issues that specifically are, creating disparities and issues that affect Black residents more. Sometimes it's this perspective of saying it's a rendition of saying all lives matter, right? People sometimes get offended because they feel like if you are highlighting for Black lives to matter, you are taking away from all lives mattering. And I want to really challenge the folks that really want to be a part of the change, especially as we look at the effects of people living in Shorewood, being stopped by law enforcement in Shorewood, kids playing basketball on the court, on the playground in Shorewood, that would have an officer called for them to respond as they do nothing wrong, but because somebody assumes that it could be an issue, it could be a problem, that it is okay to have an agenda to focus on addressing the fact that there are anti-Black sentiments, there are anti-Black policies, that there are anti-Black protocols being done in the village of Shorewood, and that there's nothing wrong with that. And that we can still be inclusive after we make some really substantial gains there. But we cannot hide under the guise of saying that if we can't focus on everybody, then we shouldn't do anything at all. Because we all know that lives are at stake. We all know that as you look at situations that have happened in Milwaukee, these situations likely can happen in any municipality in Milwaukee County. We've seen, not just in the city of Milwaukee, but in Wauwatosa and West Allis with Vigilante, ism with Corey Stingley and him losing his life in even it was a liquor store, it was a convenience store. A teenager having his life taken because he was suspected of stealing. These things can happen anywhere. And if you really want to be a part of change, if you really want to be forward thinking, you have to get past the feeling that pulls you away from addressing those things.
May I respond? Just a quick response.
Sure.
Representative Bowen, I agree with you.
Okay.
Change has to happen in the immediate neighborhood. And I support it.
All right, next question, Tyler.
Next person is Alicia Obiakor.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alicia Obiakor. I'm one of the student representatives for the HRC, and I feel really grateful to be in this position because usually students that look like me are not given these opportunities. And we aren't really put in these spaces where myself and my friends and my peers are able to have these conversations with the right people and in the right rooms. So what I wrote down while I was taking some notes was about this idea of like, and I don't mean to be disrespectful anyway, but Mrs. Carpenter, I just, when I'm having conversations with people at school, and I've gone to the Shore District my entire life. I went to kindergarten here, elementary school at Lake Bluff, went to Shore Intermediate School, and now I'm going into my 12th grade year of high school. So when I have these conversations with students at school or just in general in life, their answers are, well, yes, of course I support Black Lives Matter. Of course I support you as a human that just so happens to be Black. But, you know, what about LGBTQ people? And what about, like you said, Jewish people? And what about Latinos? What about all these other people? And I say, yes, like that is an issue. Yes, that is something that we need to address. Yes, that's something that needs to change. And I am fully with you on that. And I will act on that with you. And the question I have for everyone is really, do you fear walking down the street? Because I live in Shorewood and I fear walking alone. Do you kiss your children as if it's the last time that you're gonna see them? Do you hold your children when they leave the house and go hang out with their friends as if it's the last time that you're going to see them? Because my parents do. My parents do. And I have to talk on the phone with somebody when I'm going to my destination to make sure that somebody hears me. I'm not trying to invalidate anyone of their own pain and their own injustices that they've faced, but we have to realize that there is a level of where you just have to say, okay, this isn't about me right now. There are things that are bigger than me in this time, and I understand, okay, I'm going through something, my people are going through something. I see and know people that affiliate with these religions or have these you know, that look different than me, or maybe we all have our own issues, but there's something bigger than me right now. And that's something that I've asked for people that I know will never understand my experiences and will never understand racism to really try and empathize with me in that way, because you can't have sympathy because you've never experienced it, but you have to try and learn to have empathy. And another question for a man that spoke, I didn't catch his name when I was writing this down, but he said something about, I really appreciate all these responses, by the way, but he said something about inclusiveness and agreeing with Mrs. Carpenter. And is this an issue of like Black versus white? And what I really want to emphasize is that this is an issue between racists and everyone else. I am not anti-white. I am not anti-LGBTQ, because I love everyone as if they are me, as if they're my sister, as if they're my brother, my mother. There's never a time where I'm like, I'm going to try and invalidate someone because I know how that feels. I've been invalidated my whole entire life attending Shorewood and just being a Black girl in a white world. My parents are immigrants. My father is from Nigeria. My mother is from Jamaica. They came to America so that I could have a better life. And when they came here, they didn't realize that the world would be so mean, and that they would have to learn how to navigate in spaces that looked pretty on paper. They're going to school here. They came here for an education, but they didn't realize that when they got to the school, all the students would try to alienate them and make them feel like they were worthless. So I just want people to know that when we're having these conversations, it's interesting to see even adults saying some of similar things that I hear people my age saying, of like, okay, what about LGBTQ people? Of course, Black trans women are one of the most undermined, some of the most undermined individuals in the entire society, along with Black men and Black women. So there's no way that I could never feel for other people that are also invalidated. But I am just saying that when we're talking about anti-Blackness, I want people to really think about, okay, yes, things are uncomfortable on this day. They place it on the wrong day. That should never happen. Never have tests on Jewish holidays. But every day is a protest for Black people. I don't get to go home and feel like an accomplished white citizen. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Alicia. I think you highlighted a lot of good points. And for the folks that have spoken already, usually what happens is you might feel like you're being attacked, or it also reverberates feelings for other folks, well, to say, well, I was going to speak, I was going to share, but I saw that they got attacked, so I'm not going to share. So I'm the moderator that is going to call out those feelings, so you don't allow that to get in the way of the progress. Because again, you can get in a place where you might feel like, well, I'll silence myself. I won't be engaged in this conversation. All of a sudden, I won't be a champion. It's too much. And I'm just here to say that this is a very important dialogue that we have to continue to happen, that we have to continue to have, even when it makes us feel uncomfortable. But these are not attacks on you personally as individuals. These are essential conversations that we need to have so we can find champions to eradicate racism, so that we can really eliminate anti-Black sentiments. And I think some people are saying really good stuff in the chat portion as well, about anti-Blackness being different, and what has led to it being different in this country. Let's keep going, Tyler.
Next on the list is Trustee Wesley Warren.
Thank you, Tyler, and thank you, Alicia, for your words. Thank you, Representative Bowen, for moderating this discussion. We really appreciate it. And I just wanted to, at the top of the call here, just thank everyone for being on the call, and thank the residents who are participating. These calls are vital and they're crucial. And when we talk about racism throughout Shorewood, throughout the North Shore, throughout the Milwaukee area, I too went to Atwater Elementary School and all the way through. So sometimes I look at these problems and I think they're completely intractable. What do we do? You just don't even know where to start. And it's an incredibly frustrating and powerless feeling, but I think we all empower each other in calls like this. I can tell you that during the BLM movement, we got a lot of feedback on the board level, a lot of ideas, a lot of initiatives. And I went from thinking to myself, I don't know I'll be honest. I want to share honestly here. I don't know what I should do as a leader. I don't know. I have all these feelings. I don't know where to channel them to. Wow, this community, when we talk and when we are honest with each other and when we're uncomfortable, we come up with actionable steps to take as a community to move forward. And I wanted to just say, we're taking notes here tonight, and we want to put some of these ideas into action. We don't just want to talk anymore. That's part of what the movement's about. We're done talking and we want to start to take action. So thank you all so much for being here, and we really look forward to this discussion.
Great. Next person in the queue is Eric.
Hi, everybody. So one thing I was thinking when I was listening to Jessica talk is how much our school system really teaches this, or at least when I was going to school, I'm like 40 now, but really teaches this like white narrative of, like all of our presidents being heroes, and doesn't really teach us about the brutality of slavery or stuff like Tulsa, Oklahoma. Like, I would like to see, my son learning that stuff when he's coming up so he can understand the reality of what Black people go through and what the struggles are. Like, the civil rights movement was not that long ago. There's people alive today whose parents were, gunned down by FBI agents. And I mean, it's been going on for a long time, and it's still going on today. So I would like to see that stuff taught in schools so white kids don't feel so defensive, because the truth is like, taught to them, so that they're not like, when I first started learning this stuff, I had to like throw out all this stuff I was taught in school and basically say all my teachers were wrong. And like, where are we at with that? Like, is there anybody from our school board in this chat room? Like I see a lot of people from the HCA in here, but like, are there other people from?
I don't know.
2
people from the, yeah, Emily's raising her hand there.
Okay. So that's what I would like to see as a parent who's wanting to raise a kid that, can see past color. I want him to see the truth of, these things that we've perpetuated, so he can, see what other people go through and live with every day.
And then I wanted to say, like I was in Shorewood in the 90s, and I was really sad when I came back to Milwaukee to hear that they were ending the 220 program, because the 220 program was responsible for the vast majority of African American students that were in Shorewood when I was there. And I don't know if something like that can happen again. Like, I would have had it was still sadly not enough, but I would have had a much less integrated childhood without the 220 program, and I'm really sad to see that go. I still hold those people dear to me, and I just, man, I don't know. I'm sad about it. That's all.
Okay, that's all I think we had to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
No worries. One of the things that I'm just now thinking about with Trustee Warren's comments and your comments, Eric, is let's keep in the forefront of our minds as we have this conversation of what is it I can do in my capacity of serving the district, but as a resident and as a community member that can intervene in these situations. And then I think one of the other things that came to mind for me, Eric, is that whenever we would have a conversation about literacy, we would have solutions that would say, well, let's focus on early childhood, and we can focus on our kids at an early age, and then we can make sure that they are able to read, and then we're good to go. The only problem is that you have 8th graders that are struggling to read. You have juniors that are in high school that are struggling to read. So how do you have an all-around approach in the Shorewood community for your older residents, older kids, as I would say, that have to also unlearn some of the things that they have absorbed, that they have been conditioned to accept. I always think it's interesting around the holidays when you are having conversations, especially around politics in this time, with members of your family that may not agree or have the same political leanings that you do. But it doesn't mean you throw them away. You can't, right? How are you able to coexist, and how are you able to hold them accountable, especially when certain viewpoints can actually lead to the death of, in this case, Black people in the community?
Before I call on the next person, I just want to mention that 4 out of the 5 school board members are on the call. I want to thank them for their time, because they're going to have a late night with their board meeting. And in addition, they typically they meet at 7. They push back their meeting till 7:30 just to be able to have an additional half hour for us to meet. So, you know, I do want to thank their time for that, because I think the additional 30 minutes will be really helpful. Yep. And you are next up.
And you have to unmute yourself. We can't hear you. All good, all good.
Okay, take 2. Thank you. There's nothing that makes me feel more middle-aged than forgetting to unmute myself. But anyway, thank you, everybody. So a couple of things that have been on my mind in this last phase of awareness is just how much, you know, I feel like I learned that race plus power equals racism at age 12, and I still don't consider myself an ally. I cause harm with my blindness and insensitivity all the time. And so I guess I just want to say, as a community, it's really okay to just spend lots and lots and lots of time learning and listening and reading and getting comfortable with the words white supremacy, and it's baked into literally every single thing. And so I just want to urge us as a community to really dig in and to understand that there is not going to be a quick fix to this. There's going to be lots and lots of raising awareness and having to try again, and that's part of it. And it's unfortunate. I want everyone to live in peace. I want all people, Black people, to feel safe walking, and I want them to feel loved and affirmed. But the reality is that our country doesn't do that, and it works against doing that every single day. So we are going to have to work really hard. And I would like to look into training for bystander interruption. When I was on the village board and Norma Duckworth spoke out about what she was experiencing from her neighbor, it never occurred to me as an elected official that I could make any difference in the world. And so, that's why I love every time Representative Bowen speaks, I feel a little bit more insightful and empowered, and I connect dots that literally didn't exist for me before. And so I appreciate that, but I also acknowledge that that kind of unawareness is just perpetuating this, because you have to wait for us all to wake up. So that's one concrete thing. And then anti-racism training might go along with that. And I think that it really, and then I posted on Facebook a couple of weeks ago that, you know, when we say our parks and our stores and our business district, or, you know, there was something that happened and it was done by a person who doesn't live in Shorewood, those are all ways of racism playing out and white supremacy playing out in our community. And so I would also ask the community that we go forward and really list the concrete ways that it plays out in Shorewood, that we're experiencing it every day and that we're seeing it, and really listen to that and then see where we can go from there instead of talking in the abstract. I just realized I didn't stay to the limit, but so I'll stop now.
And I thank you, Ann, and I think those are really good suggestions that folks can consider to share as part of their thoughts on solutions for sure. Thank you.
Next up, I have Pablo.
Oh, hey, everybody. I raised my hand when the gentleman asked if any school board members were here. That was what my hand was raised for. But since I do have the mic, I wanted to thank publicly the HRC and one of their newest members, Alicia Obiakor. Boy, you never cease to amaze me. You are amazing. You're incredible. And also Representative Bowen for facilitating this discussion. And to those curious as to what this going on in the schools, know that we've made this a top priority, and not just now, not as a result of the BLM movement, but rather it's been something that's been part of our discussions and curricular changes at the district for the last 3 or 4 years. It's something that we're constantly growing in and hearing from people, and when we stumble, we get back up and we go at it again. We're not stopping, and you're absolutely right. You shouldn't have to wait until you're in your 30s to learn about the Tulsa massacre or what's going on in our communities. So I'm gonna be quiet because I really appreciate listening to everybody else, and wanted to thank the HRC again for hosting this, and Representative Bowen, thank you.
I just wanted to jump in here. I do thank everyone for their attendance. Just so you know, I am monitoring the chat. So if there are questions that I may have, I may be asking to follow up with certain people, but I do want people to know that, you know, your questions and your concerns are being considered, because as an HRC, we do have subcommittees that we can use to further investigate any questions or concerns. So thank you, everyone, for sharing.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Pablo, for focus on this. Yes, even before, you know, we got into this resurgence of racial equity and justice, and I think it's important to highlight. We have to really think about ways to get engaged in solutions that don't take 5 years, 10 years, you know, to implement. We have to really think about what can we do on the short term and long term at the same exact time. And I appreciate the folks that have been a part of the diversity roundtable at the Shorewood School District. And now that we're really in this era right now, how do we find those ways to advance proposals that can be implemented in the same year? So thank you.
Next in the queue is Julie.
Hi, thank you. Sorry, I came into the discussion late. And so right when the gentleman who was of Indian descent was speaking, and then the young lady who's the high school representative, and they just hearing both of them sparked a lot of thoughts and feelings. I wanted to commend her for what she said. I was silently, you know, cheering her on, and I'm very impressed with how she presented her points. And as a member of the Jewish community, I understand that, you know, a lot of people say, well, what about me? What about, you know, not scheduling things on Jewish holidays and things like that? And I have been asked numerous times to speak up in situations such as this, because I have had marginalizing experiences. But I will second the feeling that I think now is not the time for me to talk about me and my experiences. It's the time to support the Black voices and the Black lives, and to use my empathy from my experiences to be a better ally, and to uplift their voices. I also think, talking about what we learned in school and what we didn't learn in school, like I just learned about the Tulsa Massacre this year as well. When I was in high school, I grew up graduated from Whitefish Bay, which was also made diverse by the 220 program. And I also have very near and dear friends because of that I'm still friends with to this day. And I'm very sad that that's not continuing. Because the same for me, my experience growing up would have been far less diverse. And I'm very grateful for that. But in high school, I was appalled myself that we didn't spend hardly any time on the Holocaust. And the Holocaust, while it's a horrific event, is small in terms of the historical scope as to what Black Americans have experienced in this country for hundreds and hundreds of years. So we need, even more so, we need to educate all of our youth about that. I mean, I think as a Jew, we are educated amongst our own community about that. So I didn't feel like my education was lacking in my school for myself, but for others. And I think, although I can't speak for anyone, I would imagine the same awareness is in the Black community. But it's not my awareness, and I'm the one that needs to be educated about it. The people who don't grow up with that as a part of their identity. In the same vein, I am a musician and a music teacher, and my professional organizations have had many discussions recently about the whiteness of the classical music world, how less than 4% of musicians, conductors, and composers are Black Americans. And how can we, in our teaching world, how can we diversify our teachership, and how can we make classical music available to more students and not have it seen as this privileged, rich white people's thing, which I know is a big thought out there. And I am now just learning, as somebody who has 2 music degrees and 20 plus years of teaching, about Black composers and Black classical music. And I think that in all the arts, in the orchestra and the band, in fine arts, in drama, I think that that's a huge lack in our education, that we don't get enough of those Black voices in the arts, where the human condition is super raw and emotions, arts describe history in a way that words cannot. And I'd like to see the school district expand their arts curriculum to include more Black artists, Black musicians, Black composers, Black dramatists, things like that. That's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Very good suggestions.
Next on the list is Tracy.
Hi there, this is Tracy. I just have a question regarding the policing issues. When we look at, we know it's not just the reaction that the police have, but the fact that they are called in the first place is often an issue. And I guess I wonder for the HRC and village board members if there's an appetite for like the Karen law, right? The calls to deal with people who repeatedly call the police or make racist 911 calls, if there is an appetite in our community for that. And then separately, when we look at, there's also dispatch is an issue, like the fact that the description of a person who when you're calling the police, if you could just leave a description that is just, 6 foot tall Black man, that's not a great description. Anyone could be stopped because of that. But the dispatch service is shared with other communities in the North Shore. And so I'm curious how, as a community of Shorewood, we can affect the dispatch service as well. So that is my question. Thank you.
I'll allow members of the HRC to give some comment, and then I'll follow up. Very good suggestions.
Yeah, if a member of the data subcommittee wants to speak, I think this might be a time, at least for part of Tracy's question, to maybe let people know of some of the work that you're starting to work on and take a look at as far as traffic stops. I know there's other data to certainly talk about, but Mackenzie, Matt, or Jesse, if one of you kind of want to speak on some of the efforts that you're working on, and then any thoughts you have in relation to Tracy as far as other ways that you can collaborate with the police department.
I'm happy to speak on that. Sure. So we actually have a meeting coming up with Lieutenant Liebenthal, who's on this call, I believe, if he wants to chime in as well. We have received information based on traffic stops that happen in Shorewood for the month of September. But with that, we have a lot of questions regarding that information. And so what we've done is we've reached out to the Shorewood Solidarity Network, Shorewood Moving Forward, someone from the Shorewood Police Commission, a high school student, and then a few other community members as well. So we're invited them then to join that conversation. So that way we're sure that we're looking at it from multiple perspectives and getting a lot of input. And that way we're kind of all discussing this then with the police as we move forward.
As far as Lieutenant Liebenthal and also Police Chief Peter Nimmer, I know are on the call. I don't know if any of you could, or one of you two could comment to Tracy's question about descriptions being called in to dispatch.
Yes, I can address that. So one of the things we've been doing is working with the Bayside Communication Center to talk about when they receive a call, to talk about behaviors and not about necessarily descriptions of people, but what's the behavior that the person is displaying that would be quote unquote suspicious. So we'll oftentimes receive calls from dispatch about suspicious behavior, but they are being trained, and we as our supervisors and our officers are being trained and have done a fairly good job, I believe, in the past of asking about what is suspicious about what they're doing. And so there have been times where we have been called regarding quote unquote suspicious behavior, and the officer drove by and said, yep, there's a person standing there and they're not doing anything wrong, I'll be 10-8. And so those are the types of things that we're trying to do, and trying to be more specific on what actionable items are they doing that's either suspicious or potentially criminal. And if there's nothing there, then there shouldn't be a police response. And our officers are being trained that if there's not a need for you to stop and talk with that person, then don't. And so we are doing, I think, a fair job of that. I think as the dispatchers get better, we'll be better for that as well. So, but again, always room for improvement.
Thank you, Chief Nimmer. I think that's a really good point. And I like the way that Tracy is thinking about the issue as far as looking at systems and how they are deciphering the different things that are coming in that they would usually have to respond to because somebody called for service. At this point in particular, people are talking about defunding the police and really being able to understand what that means. I would hope that Shorewood would have a police department where you're not paying them to respond to things that they shouldn't have to respond to, not putting a burden on Chief Nimmer and the police department to handle calls that clearly could be handled by a member of the Shorewood North Shore Health Department or something like that, or a member of DPW and the Parks Department and things of that nature, where you don't need to waste public resources in your police department to respond to things that they should not have to respond to. It is the same exact concept, and to make sure that you're aligning the things that really they are geared and there to be able to handle. So that makes complete sense, to be able to figure out how do you are able to address descriptions that are coming in, and to ensure that it's much more descriptive, then, if that was description, that's me. So you want to be able to decipher between that, and then you also want to make sure that an officer doesn't have to be called for kids playing basketball in the park, especially if nothing violent is happening and nothing is, substantially being done to for anybody to get hurt. You clearly could have other staff that could be there to handle it and allow your police department to be saved and used for way better utilized resources and situations. Thank you.
Next person in the queue has themselves as anonymous.
Can everybody hear me?
Yep, there's a little feedback, but if you start talking, we'll see how it goes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Better?
Better.
So I have intentionally kept myself anonymous. I suspect that a number of you who are on the phone will know who I am, and I would be more than happy to speak to those of you privately, but I would request you respectfully not out me, and I think that will become apparent as I go on in my remarks. I'm very concerned about the unintended consequences of the enthusiasm of this group and the Black Lives Matter movement. This is a terrible time in this country. I, as much as anyone, want to make sure that Donald Trump does not get reelected, but I fear that the enthusiasm that surrounds the Black Lives Matter movement and things that are said and things that are done out of enthusiasm are going to drive the very voters that you need. I will vote for anybody but Donald Trump, but there are many who I deal with on a daily basis who I don't think will vote for Joe Biden. And much of the excess that comes out of this movement is the reason that that's happening. And I will just give you one example. I attended the march and the rally. I marched for 2 hours. I saw many encouraging things. I saw two very discouraging things. One of the young men who got up and spoke, he was clearly very nervous. I thought he did a very good job, but there came a point in his remarks where I think he was trying to say something inspirational, catchy, pithy, whatever. And what he said was, there can't be peace until there's first anarchy. And that kind of message does not sit well with many people who would like to be your allies. It was totally unnecessary, and it sends the wrong message to all the folks that were in that crowd. The young people in that crowd now think that's a good thing to say, and if you're truly interested in change, you need more people on your side than just everybody who's already in the echo chamber. The other thing that I found very disheartening was David's remark that, and it was totally gratuitous, there was no reason it needed to be said. It could have been handled in a much different manner. What you said, David, was, I understand there were some people whose lawns got run over. And you know what I say to them? I say, get over it. It's not people's lives. Nobody is equating lawns to people's lives. That is a false narrative. And to suggest that people don't have a legitimate concern when people who are supposedly peacefully protesting take it upon themselves to drive across somebody's personal property, that's just, to a lot of people, that is offensive. And I am sure you're going to tell me that we need to get over it. That there's a lot of anger, and I understand that. But the way to handle that, if you really want people to be your ally, is to say, it was unfortunate. I wish they had not done that. But instead, you went out of your way to make it, to play to your base. That's what Donald Trump does. And you are going to endanger your movement if you continue to play to your base and don't try to enlist other people who really do want to be your ally. I want to be your ally, but it's very difficult for me to be your ally when you say things like that. This is not going to change overnight. What really needs is people by people. And what that means, and the way I conduct myself every day, every new person I encounter, I look and I assume the best about them until they give me some reason to think otherwise. I do that every day. And we, as a community, everybody needs to start doing that. And that's not just white people, that's African American people as well. Alicia, I would love to sit down and talk with you, because it appalls me that you tell me that you fear walking down the street in Shorewood, Wisconsin. That to me is, I will tell you, it is hard for me to believe. I mean, I understand that you may feel as though somebody looks at you and says, you know, why is this young black lady over here? I haven't seen her around here. But to suggest that you fear for your life, that's disturbing to me. And I would really like to hear where that comes from, because that's not the Shorewood that I've lived in for 29 years.
Mr. Anonymous, can I jump in? Because you're just running up your time, but I want to continue this conversation because I think it's important.
You, yeah, I'm
okay. Can I get you to pause a little bit? Because I want to jump in, and you know, to several parts of that conversation that you've highlighted. I think it's important to recognize that many people in this country are in a state of grieving, especially if you have black skin. And I think for the most part, I've never seen this many white people concerned and get engaged like they are right now. What I can say is it's really important for us to focus on the narrative that police encounters don't have to end with black people losing their lives. And you know, much early in the protests, we're at day 47. Things are a lot tighter in the way that the protests are happening right now. And there was a level of just engagement that it was hard to get a hold of, but there were a lot of people that were engaged at that time. So I don't have to condone behavior to understand their actions. And I don't have to condone statements to understand the frustration and the grief that young people feel when they live in a community and have to deal with a system that they feel like will never change. And I also, I ran for state assembly in 2014 in a four-way race. And I did a lot of doors on both sides of the district. And I remember you know, being in parts of Shorewood in the middle of the day, and it all seems very peaceful. I mean, I literally would knock doors probably until about 9 o'clock, and it would start to get dark. And whether it was the middle of the day or at night, there would be times where my heart would just race out of the expectation that someone would just end up calling the police on me for no reason at all. And it literally happened to one of my colleagues in Madison. There was an expectation that she was selling drugs while she was doing doors for her campaign. But that feeling is real. And you might not have felt it before, living in the skin that you've had for the last 29 years in Shorewood. But for other folks, that's not their experience. And I think the purpose of this conversation is to get beyond our own experience and how we walk through the world in our own shoes and to recognize other people's experiences. So from that standpoint, I can understand why you may not understand how other people could have those feelings, but it very much is real. And it's very clear that Shorewood is a very desirable community to live in. You look at different parts of southeastern Wisconsin, even the state, and the real estate, the education system, a number of things that make Shorewood just an amazing, attractive community. But I can tell you, I would hesitate moving to Shorewood to lose the ability to be comfortable, to lose the ability not to have a sinking feeling that I will end up accused of something that I did not do. But it shouldn't have to be that way.
Let me, if I may, let me throw it back at you, because
sure.
You say we have to have solutions.
Yeah.
We can't change anything. I'm white, you're black. Your perception of the world seems to be that just because you're black and you're walking around in a predominantly white community, you will never feel comfortable.
No, I don't think
I can't change the fact that I'm white. You can't change the fact that you're black. Shorewood, Wisconsin isn't in the next 3 years, the next 5 years, the next 10 years going to become majority African American. It's just not going to happen. So what is your solution for how we make you feel comfortable just walking around in Shorewood, Wisconsin?
Sure. I think there are some assumptions that you're making of how people feel, or what they've said, that are not based on what people are actually sharing. I want to say that. And you should feel comfortable enough to not be anonymous, right? And to be able to be a part of this.
You know why I desire to be anonymous? Because despite the fact that I am a good person, a well-meaning person, I really want Shorewood to be a place where all people can feel comfortable.
Sure. Okay.
I would, in fact, I think there are probably quite a few people on this call who would label me somehow a racist. And I have lived my whole life with that word meaning something quite pejorative. It's somebody who hates Black people and or thinks they are inherently inferior. That is not me. That has never been me. And yet the Black Lives Matter movement and books like White Fragility, which I have read from cover to cover several times, they would have us now use the word racist to mean anybody, regardless of whether they hate Black people, think Black people are inferior. They are a racist merely if they have any reaction, whether it's implicit, explicit, that stereotypes a Black person in any way, that person is a racist. And I find that, to me, to be personally offensive to me, and I think it's totally counterproductive. because if you want other allies, you shouldn't have it as a first prerequisite that every white person acknowledges that they are a racist. And that, unfortunately, is the message that much of the Black Lives Matter movement delivers. I want to be your ally. I am not a racist in the pejorative sense that you suggest. And there is no way that you should be changing the meaning of the word to include people who are much different than, I'm not George Wallace, I'm not David Duke, I'm not Donald Trump, I'm a good person. I want to help African Americans. I want this to be an all-inclusive community. But you speak of Shorewood, Wisconsin as a place that is inhabited by systematically racist people. That is offensive to me. That is counterproductive. And I will stop talking, and I'm happy to engage with anybody who wants to engage with me, but I would just please ask the people who know who I am to not out me, because I really do fear being labeled as a racist, and I have a reputation to protect in this community.
And I would, you know, and we're not here to have a back and forth, but I think it's an important, point to just talk about several things, regardless of the election. And I think sometimes we get sucked into believing that everything will be fixed from one election, and that never has been the case, right? That the struggle that Black people have in this country or in our communities will all of a sudden go away because it's a certain candidate. And I think we really have to challenge ourselves. If people want to be allies, that you cannot be an ally on your own terms. That's just not how it works, right? And that if you are willing to embrace change in the community, that means challenging yourself too. And for the people that have the experiences that are different than you, it's not just about finding it hard to believe that they have those experiences. It is believing that those experiences are real. And that they can happen in the same community that you grew up in, where you did not experience those things. So I think that's the majority of what I wanted to cover. But
and I will just, I will just say that it's quite clear from the chats that my fears are very well founded.
Well, I think you can.
I'm sorry for taking myself off of mute. I'm sorry for taking myself off of mute, but if we can continue the conversation, we only have 30 minutes left. I'm not the moderator, but I'd like us to continue.
Yeah, I'd like to move on too. So thank you, Anonymous. I'm open to conversations, and let's keep going down the list.
Michelle is actually, you're next. So if you want to stay unmuted to speak, go for it.
Awesome. So I made one comment about chapter 220. And in terms of that, from my perspective, not being Milwaukee native, that doesn't seem to satisfy the concern of trying to get diversity in our schools. But how do we make this community more welcoming for people of color? And if we really want to make an impact on education, how do we help our neighbors? How do we help Milwaukee? How do we support furthering equity in education throughout this very small community that we live in? And chapter 220, in my perspective, I wasn't a chapter 220 child. It's not the answer. It's not enough. So that was just the one statement on that. The other statement is La Crosse did quite a bit of work throughout their community in terms of pulling their community up. And they partnered with Nurturing Diversity Partners, Reggie Jackson, Frank Kaplan, and really worked towards how do we create a more inclusive culture. They worked through a grant in order to get funding for it, but they pulled the entire community in. And it was similar to some of the learning around unlearning racism. But that would be a great opportunity. It's not just our schools that need to change. It's our community that needs to change. So that's just my comment there, and I'm leaving it back to the moderators to respond.
Again, I'd like to share, just say thank you for those who are at least respecting each other, speaking in a respectful manner, and just continuing to understand that this conversation has to be able to move us forward. I just wanted to thank everyone for the time. We do have approximately 30 minutes left before some of our members will be leaving for the school board meeting. So thank you again for your attendance.
Tyler, I want to just check the queue. How many people in the queue?
So I have Natraj and Alicia on the queue, but I just unmuted the people that are on a phone that may not have the raise the hand feature. So if any of you are wishing to speak, please let me know or please speak up right now.
I would like to speak.
Yeah, I have Natraj and Alicia in the queue. Before we go to you, because that would be your second time around, I just want to make sure those that don't have the raise your hand feature, I unmuted you. So this would be a time that if you want to speak, you can. Any of you wish to speak? Okay, seeing none, Natraj, you are next on the queue.
Thank you, Tyler. So listening to all the conversations so far, one of the things that comes to mind is Representative Bowen, Jessica, Anonymous, Julie. I agree with all what you're saying. The concept that I think we are dealing with today is that we are tolerating each other. And can we get to the next level of accepting each other? That is a question that I think the board, the school board, need to look at is what's acceptance? Because acceptance in the sense of who you are, irrespective of what you look like or what you are physically about, is more important than the tolerance of that we're talking about. Thank you.
Okay, and then Alicia, you're next.
Okay, so I just wanted to say that I really appreciate everyone's nice words. It mean a lot. And I don't really know how to work Zoom, but I'm like getting used to it since we've had virtual classes. So I'm not used to responding to people in the chat, but I did write down a couple of things that people were asking me and just my response to some of the other comments while I've taken notes and listened to people. So one of the comments, and I apologize if I'm over 3 minutes, but one of the comments previously from another Jewish woman, and I respect everyone's opinion. I respect everything that everyone's saying, but I really appreciate how she talked about in her own experiences with music. She didn't start learning about Black composers until now. And as someone who's in chamber orchestra and also acted in the drama program as well, I think I felt very insulted by the fact that one day out of the school year and during Black History Month, we learned about Black composers. It was only one day. And I've been playing my violin since I was 8 years old. And never once have I played any music from a Black composer. Not only that, while acting in the drama program, I stopped doing drama because I got tired of playing a slave or playing a role that was meant for a white girl. So what I want to see from Shorewood is to have plays like The Wiz, have all these inclusive programs where we're allowed to see Black joy, where we're allowed to see some happiness and tears, but there's something beautiful about what it's actually portraying. And then another question I received was, have I been stopped by the police? I myself have not been stopped by the police, but I've been followed by the police in Shorewood while I was walking home with my backpack, walking home from school. And in regards to Anonymous, his comments about that doesn't look like the Shorewood that I know. Well, my perception and my own reality of Shorewood is extremely different than that of my other white counterparts and white peers. So for people to say that they're allies, but also at the same time invalidate me and my own voice is not being an ally to me at all. In fact, to me, that is them centering it around themselves and not addressing their own internal biases. Because yes, there is overt racism. And I know a lot of white people's biggest fear is to be called racist, but there is racism on a smaller scale. There are microaggressions, there are internal biases that still are extremely detrimental to Black students. And honestly, I want to say that people that think like that are the reason why I am fearful when I go down the street in Shorewood, Wisconsin. People that think like that are the reason that I fear for my own life, because, okay, yes, you can say that you want to support me, but you cannot say in the same breath that you don't understand, or making this a very defensive thing, because those are unproductive conversations. In fact, they're counterproductive. And what I want to see from allies is not centering it around themselves, because from everything that you said, I didn't hear someone that said they wanted to support me. I felt like it was someone just saying they're scared of being called racist. And that didn't seem like someone that was like anti-racism. That just seemed like someone that was centering it around themselves. And I don't mean that with any disrespect. I'm just saying in my own opinion. And another question I received is about the curriculum in Shorewood. So from my own perspective as a Black student, so at the age in 5th grade, I tested above the 96th percentile in the WKCE for math and reading. And I was the only Black student who didn't make it into advanced math. I had to fight my way into those rooms. So when people are saying, oh, volunteers for Black students, we don't need volunteers. We need people to support us. It shouldn't have been a struggle for me to get in a classroom where it was at my level. Just learning regular algebra, I had already learned calculus. Like it's not that we need volunteers. We should just already have those things implemented into the system. It shouldn't be having, that's what makes it seem like we're getting this special treatment, is because people are deflecting from the right issue, from the actual issue, and they're trying to give us all these outsources and all these other solutions, but they're not long term. And so another thing is when people talk about unlearning and the things that they're having to unlearn, white people having to, and I appreciate people actually being willing to acknowledge that, yes, I don't know everything. Like, that's beautiful. I'm so glad that people are actually doing that, because that's all I could possibly ask is accountability, holding yourself accountable. And I think when white people address the fact that they're having to unlearn a lot of things, I want to address the fact that I, as a Black girl, only 17 years of age, am having to unlearn what I thought was right. I'm having to unlearn silencing myself just to protect my white peers so that they don't cry or so that I don't hurt their feelings. These are the same students that grow up to be adults that are, yes, afraid of being called racist. I just think it's important for people to really learn what empathy means. And like the man said, I 100% agree. Learn what accepting means. Because it's honestly disrespectful to us Black students if we're having all these conversations about equity, but no Black people or Black students are there. There may be a few Black people, but no Black students are there, the people that actually need it. I think, in fact, what we need to implement is our classes about empathy, because that is something, without learning about equity, you cannot learn equity without empathy. Because in order to learn and experience, or to learn and truly feel and indulge in this entire revolution, is to, once again, like I said, step outside of yourself. And that requires empathy, because it's something that you've never experienced. It's not sympathy, it's empathy. So in order to understand equity, you have to fully indulge and engage with having empathy. Thank you.
Tracy, you're up next.
Thank you. That's a really amazing statement on Alicia's part, and to follow that is hard. So I just want to give it a little space for a second. Thank you. I want to add on to what both Alicia and Julie spoke about with the lack of representation in the curriculum. I think that that's really important to talk about. And I think that we also know that one of the things we want is representation in the of educators, right? Where we want Black educators. I think that we also know that those things are going to take time for Shorewood to implement. So one small suggestion, baby steps, if you will, is to use artwork in the classroom to have additional representation, to have pictures of, Black visionaries, Black leaders in that math classroom, like alongside others. That's one of the suggestions. And there was a project that at the Authentic Learning Showcase last year, where Lake Bluff students, in fact, recognized that all of the silhouettes throughout Lake Bluff were of white men. And they went through and created a temporary art installation of more diverse figures that could be present. And I think that that's something that shouldn't be temporary, that we could do a lot quickly to create a little bit more representation in the schools through art. So thank you.
At this time, I do not have anyone else in the queue. We have 15 minutes remaining. So it's great that we have 72 participants on the call. And I thank all of you for listening and sharing. Just want to make sure that you all receive an opportunity, that if you have ideas or a story you want to share, or just your feelings, this is why the HRC set up that forum. So is there anyone else that would like to get in the, oh, go ahead, Representative Bowen.
We have 15 minutes, and we talked about possibly some of the polling questions that we could implement with the folks on the call where they could vote. Do you have any of those ready that we could have people get some insight on?
If you could somehow talk for 30 seconds to a minute, I can have it posted.
Okay, great. I do have one, because one of the things that came up is the political dynamics that are happening right now in this era. And I think it's important to highlight, beyond the usual dynamics of the left versus the right, or Democrats versus Republican. You've had several shifts in this country, and especially as you are now in the era of racial justice. And there has been a clear call not just to placate that we could do something or we want to do something. In this era, it is all about what are we actually going to do. It is about action. One of the things that makes Donald Trump so powerful is his control of and his really good ability to be able to produce white fear. And as we talk about what the commercials that we're seeing right now and the perspectives that are being pushed right now, it is all based on people just being so fearful again that they would just choose a candidate based on the fact of not what the country can aspire to, what our communities can aspire to. It is about being fearful of not having access to the status quo that benefits people in our communities more than others, that upholds a system of white supremacy and a system of white privilege that gives white folks privileges and powers that other folks do not have. And I think it's really important to highlight how much some people really are afraid of losing that, or are afraid of living in a world where equity for them means losing this feeling of control, losing a feeling of power. So, I think one of the things that would be encouraging for folks that are looking to move to a community like Shorewood, or to live comfortably in a community like Shorewood, would be to see a group of champions in that community that are willing to challenge the status quo, that are willing to challenge the experiences that people of color, especially Black folks, can have when anti-Blackness and anti-Black sentiments come up, and can exude through policy, through experience, through systems. And I feel like there are folks on this call that maybe are already supportive, the people that maybe are supportive, and the folks that haven't been able to be engaged in the conversation and might say that they're not supportive of the way to get there. And I think it's all about right now is finding a collective of people in Shorewood that are willing to be champions and to say, this is what we will do every day to remove those anti-Black sentiments. This is what we will do when situations of discrimination come up and exist. And we will use our time, our effort, our resources. We will use our bodies to be able to be the opposition to allow those things to fester.
So I'm going to improvise, because when I click polls, it says you are logged in from another device. Your polling session is inactive. I am not logged in on another device, so I don't know why that is coming up. But maybe if people want to put their submissions in the chat, we can kind of see what some comments could be.
There are 3 hands raised.
Yeah, there are 3 hands raised. So if people want to just submit their chat, the comments in the chat, so we get their feedback. It's an open-ended question. What does community-oriented policing look like to you? So if you want to put your response to that question, that would be great. Once again, it is, what does community-oriented policing look like to you? Ann and Natraj, I know you're both in the queue, but we have Melissa who hasn't spoken yet. So Melissa, you are next up.
Sure, thank you, Tyler, so much. My name is Melissa, and my son is Eric Lucas, who goes to Shorewood High School. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the fact that one of the big things that we talk about in our family is, Alicia, a little bit what you talked about the importance of education, and exactly the importance of Black history and accurate Black history being portrayed in our education system. And I just, since we're talking about ideas and we're talking about things that need to be raised, I just also want to really highlight the importance and the lack of education that is being taught in our schools about the wide and long history of African Americans on this planet and in this country. And I just definitely want to call out the school board, as well as any of our teachers and administrators that are listening, and just really, really highlight the importance of us sitting down and really talking about our curriculum and how we can start to change that, and how we can just start to incorporate that into our daily learning for our children, because that is such a key and important part of developing our village and our society here in Shorewood. And I really think that it's just such an important part of raising our children. So I just wanted to highlight that. And thank you, Alicia, so much for everything that you've said. It's humbling to hear you talk, and I just thank you so much.
Anne, you're next up.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to say, as probably you all know, I submitted affidavits against the village board, 2 members of the village board, for incidents that I felt were racially biased and motivated. And I really wanted to take the opportunity to say the reason I did that is the 2 board members that I named, you know, clearly we don't get along politically or socially. But I did it not for political reasons and not to build opposition against those 2 board members. It was to make a statement that we can act however we want and treat each other horribly or disagree, but when it comes down to race, it's not okay. And I wanted to give the village board a chance, and the HRC a chance, and residents a chance to just push pause and make a statement that we acknowledge that when race is involved in our interactions in a negative, way, that we just have to acknowledge it, and we have to call it out, and we have to say it isn't okay, and we have to take responsibility, and we need to apologize. And so I just wanted to take this opportunity that, you know, maybe this is the first step in sort of acknowledging that it's okay to apologize, and it's okay for white people to acknowledge that they made a mistake or that they didn't know, and it's okay to start making amends so that we can move forward together. Thank you.
Nitraj?
Yeah, this is a thank you very much, Alicia, thing in terms of bringing the perspective of what you are thinking about, what you have experienced, and how you've done it, and how you dealt with it. I'd really like the concept of music, because I, coming from India, play bluegrass. I sing barbershop. And I would love to have a circle form in Shorewood in some good jam and of blues and jazz. So music is something I think that brings people together. I agree with you. I think it should be outside the school. I think it should be community-wide. And having come to this country in the 80s and having lived in Detroit, close to the ghettos, as they called it then, all I can say is hallelujah. And as a private pitch, a lot of you have husbands, and maybe you yourselves. Please join the Shorewood Men's Club, because we can make a difference. Thank you.
Thanks for the comments on the chat, as several of you can continue to respond. I still don't have anyone in the queue, and we do have 4 minutes, so we have time for 1 or 2 more people in case you would like to.
Tyler, can I make a suggestion that we give members of the HRC just some time to give some thoughts, some reflections?
Great idea. Any HRC members want to raise your hand to speak? Reflect on some of the things you heard. Deba?
Hi, everyone. I'm Deba Briscoe, and I'm on the HRC. I've been on the HRC for 2 years. I want to thank everybody for coming to this forum to speak your your truth and comment on your experiences. It's really helpful from where I sit to try and understand, exactly, where the community is. I haven't been comfortable with everything that's been said from a personal standpoint, but I understand that people need a forum to be able to speak their feelings and their experiences and essentially their truth. I know that the HRC was commissioned by the village board to address community relations within the village, but I think with the current movement, our role needs to be a little bit larger in the community. We need to have a larger voice. And so I'm hoping that these types of forums can continue to move forward as time goes on. I'm hoping, as I've been sitting here taking notes and looking through the comments to see what people have to say, reaching out to people so that I can meet with them individually and speak further on their situation. If anyone on the call has more to say and they want to speak to an HRC member, please feel free to reach out to me. I will put my email address in the chat box for you, and I can definitely set up time to talk through any type of concerns that you have. That does include the person that is anonymous. I understand that you don't feel that this is a safe space to basically speak and provide your own feedback. I just want you to understand that we're not always going to agree on the best way about going to get to a certain point, but that doesn't mean that we won't make it to that same point nonetheless. So thank you, everyone.
Any other HRC members before we go? All right, and Trustee Warren, I do see that you have your hand raised, so do you want to speak? And I think Sharvita is wanting to speak too.
Sure, and I'll try to be brief. I just wanted to thank everyone for their comments tonight. I really appreciate hearing this feedback and having this honest conversation. And I don't want to make any portion of this about myself or take too long, but I'm older now, and I went through Shorewood, and I hear echoes of what I went through. The comments made by Alicia, Melissa, Jocelyn, just in terms of fighting to get in that higher level class, or struggling to learn about African American heroes, reading, seeing the biography section of African American heroes being this big at Atwater. So my point is that these problems are not 5-year problems or 10-year problems. These are 30, 40, 50, 100-year problems. And we're not going to solve them overnight. But the important thing is, and this is what I really strongly feel, we need to keep each other motivated. We need to keep moving forward. And everyone needs to hold each other accountable. And need to hold the HRC accountable, the board accountable, the school board accountable to keep moving on this. Because if it were easy, we would have done it already. But it's going to take some work, and it's going to take some work over a period of years. And we're just, unfortunately, we're still at the first step here. But I hope this conversation continues, and I hope everyone here holds us accountable.
Absolutely. And thank you again. I did want to make a comment, I guess, in terms of, especially Anonymous. He made a comment. He did share a point, but I did want to say racists don't look like Archie Bunker anymore. Racists could be every one of us with our implicit and explicit bias that we have as individuals that's deep within ourselves. So really, these conversations that we've had today is about looking within yourself and understanding how can you contribute? How can you make this community that we live in a much better place? Because again, when we're talking about Black Lives Matter, it's about the quality and quantity of Black lives. It's about understanding that Black lives they're not 3/5 of a human. We're whole human individuals with, college degrees, high school diplomas, master's degrees, PhDs, living in this community, but yet and still, some of us are not being, even recognized as just being human. So that's really what this movement is about, and that's really what this conversation is about. And I did see a message from Tia. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your truths, because those are the truths that people have inside of them, and that's what they live with every day. So when Alicia shared that she didn't feel safe, I don't feel safe going to my garage at night. I don't want anybody thinking that I'm trying to steal my own car, you know? And that's happened. One day I got locked out of my apartment building, and I was trying to figure out how to get in, and someone was watching me. My same neighbor who sees me every day was watching me try to figure out how I was going to get in, because I was going to jump in through the window. And he sat there and looked at me, and I'm like, you know, I had to rethink myself. So those are the realities that we live with. So I do want to thank everyone. I am available too. And if you do have, if you would like, you can email me as well. Please allow time for a response. But I do thank everyone for the participation. I thank you, State Representative David Bowen and Tyler and the HRC members and other members of the Shorewood community and non-members of the community who took the time this evening to attend this meeting. So thank you.
Can I just say one last thing? I think my words were maybe misunderstood. And Alicia, I apologize to you because I understood you to be saying when you said that you're fearful, I thought that you were talking about you were fearful that somebody was going to physically attack you, as opposed to what Sharita just talked about, which is, you know, the fear that you're going to be accused of having done something wrong. I'm the first to acknowledge that that happens in Shorewood all the time. So I apologize for having misspoken there. And you know, truly, I go out of my way if an African-American couple is walking near my home, I go out of my way to greet them. What I was speaking to Alicia was, and it still is inconceivable to me that, and I hope that's not what you were saying, and maybe you'll correct me, but I hope you weren't saying that you feared that somebody would physically attack you because you're an African-American walking in Shorewood, because that, you know, I've never heard of anybody talking about that. I have heard a lot. I mean, my boys have told me about, you know, how bad it is to be driving while black in Shorewood, or just walking while black in Shorewood. I understand that. I wish there were a way to change that quickly, but and I do everything I can every day to try to make that, at least in my neighborhood, something that people don't need to be fearful about. So
thanks for those comments. I'd like to just chime in because it is 7:35, and I want to make sure for those that want to attend the school board meeting, which started 5 minutes ago, could. Thank you everyone for coming. Both village manager Rebecca Ewald and myself, I'm your assistant village manager if you didn't know. You know, I appreciate all the comments. We also had several of our board members on the call tonight, and I thank them for taking the time on the call as well. You know, one of the interesting things with public service is you hear a lot of different comments and different perspectives. And I think with Rebecca and I, you know, please know that we're always open to hear your thoughts and ideas. We have the great service of working with a lot of talented community members who volunteer their time to try to think of solutions. And this is a really difficult issue for the Human Relations Commission to think of some actionable items. And, you know, when we have our the commission meeting in August, you know, I look forward to that discussion. For all of you that are on the call, please know that the Human Relations Commission meeting is Thursday, August 13th at 6:30 p.m. You can get the agenda on the website. I would encourage all of you on this call to attend, to continue the discussion and to hear some of the prioritization and ideas that each of the subcommittees finalize. But truly, from the bottom of my heart, you know, it's times like this, I'm very proud to live and work in Shorewood with all of you and be a part of this community as we address, you know, racial equity. So thank you so much for all of your time.
Hey, Tyler, can I say one more thing?
Yes, please.
One, I wanted to just thank people again for joining the conversation. And what ideas that I have that I'd like to know if there are others, feel free to reach out to our office. We want to have in a sense, like a rapid response team of just community members when situations of discrimination happen. And if you'd like to participate in that group, it can be an organic group of folks from Shorewood that want to be available when things happen and can get engaged in the community. Not everything will always happen from government controlled solutions, so it has to be organic as well from the neighborhood, and we want to help coordinate it so people can work together. So once again, thank you guys so much. This does give me some hope that if I found the right house, and then I could end up being a resident of Shorewood one day. So be encouraged, guys. There's a way that we can get to a place where this changes.
I hope so.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night, okay?
Thank you.
Again, everyone. Have a good evening.